If you've seen Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, you'll remember the Demiguise as the adorable, anxiety-ridden creature that can turn invisible and see the future. Basically, it's the wizarding world's best hide-and-seek champion. In Harry Potter Magic Awakened, this little guy brings those same sneaky skills to the battlefield, except this time, he's here to smack your opponents before disappearing into thin air. So when you summon a Demiguise, it will immediately turn invisible to your opponents. It'll only target enemy duelists and ignore summons. When it gets close enough to your opponent, it'll jump forward and lay a WWE smackdown on them. After that, it'll then continue with normal attacks. Once it receives a total damage, including shield damage, of 50% of its max health, it'll retreat and go invisible again. After it retreats, it'll take a moment, then it'll start trying to move back towards your opponent for another strong attack. They'll do this retreat twice, well, if they survive long enough to do it. Now, which echoes would work well with a Demiguise? The best so far would be Ron Weasley. Ron can buff the Demiguise so when it performs its heavy attacks, it can hit your opponent for more damage. The Ron Echo can also give the Demiguise a shield so that it doesn't die before it finishes its heavy attacks. Rubeus Hagrid is another Echo that you can use with the Demiguise. Now, in order for the Demiguise to receive the buff from Hagrid, it has to be the highest MP cost summon in the deck. So in order for this to work, it would be good if your Demiguise is one of your higher level cards. Otherwise, Hagrid's Echo might not be able to heal it enough before it gets splatted by your opponents. Finally, you have Bellatrix. Since the Demiguise will directly target an enemy player, it can help charge Bellatrix to start summoning Death Eaters. You may need to add additional cards to the deck though in order to keep it alive to perform all of its heavy attacks. For which companions will help your little Demiguise out, Daniel can potentially heal your Demiguise. Might be hard considering that the Demiguise jumps around. Young Hermione can decrease the 6 MP cost of the Demiguise so that you can summon it a lot faster. Then having Dumbledore can immediately revive a Demiguise so it can perform its heavy attacks again without having to wait for the card to cycle back around. Then you also have Grop, the Frey Twins, and the Malfoy Gang, which, solely for this card, could be used as a distraction so the Demiguise doesn't get targeted as much. 4 cards, mainly those that will help keep your Demiguise alive, will help. Your goal is to keep your Demiguise alive to be able to perform its heavy attacks. Protego is a good card to use since it will give the Demiguise some protection so it doesn't die as quickly. And remember that the shield damage still counts towards the total damage to trigger the Demiguise retreating and performing a heavy attack. Thunderbird and Portkey performs a similar function to Protego by giving the Demiguise a shield, although the amount will be smaller than Protego. It does give other buffs though, like extra damage or movement. Using Inflatus helps stop your opponent from damaging your Demiguise. It'll also keep them in place while the Demiguise performs their attacks. So when you're using the Demiguise in the deck, you need to try and keep the Demiguise alive as long as possible. In the Ron deck, this would be easier with the shield buff, and if you're not using the Ron deck, you'll have to use either cards or companions to keep the Demiguise up, or prevent other summons or players from attacking the Demiguise. It will also be good to have other summons or attacks out before you summon your Demiguise, so there are other distractors on the field. So if you like sneaky playstyles and enjoy frustrating your opponents, Demiguise is your new best friend. It's slippery and it hits hard. Just remember, keep it alive, distract your opponents, and let the little guy work his magic. And until next time, fellow mages, see you in the wizarding world.
Transfiguration spell. Ventus.
With you, Cam.
I've got your back. Oh, that didn't go